Now, I want to explain another important article about zero-shot learning, but now we also use fine entity type information, ultra fine, because, for example, in biomedical domain, you have UMLS, you have also a hierarchy of types. For example, the category of findings, and then the subtypes. But we want very, very ultra fine. I mean, we go down, it becomes finer and finer. If you go up, it becomes coarser and coarser. But we need ultra fine, so even better than these things for zero-shot entity linking. I have a playlist for entity linking, about 10 papers, and you can also see. So this is our playlist for zero-shot learning, and we use it for biomedical text or any other thing. So I want to focus on this paper, but these are positive samples as well that I will explain in future lectures. So what is the motivation behind this? Entity linking, which aims at aligning ambiguous entity mentions to their reference entities in a knowledge base, plays a key role in multiple natural language processing tasks. Recently, zero-shot entity linking task has become a research hotspot, which links mentions to unseen entities to challenge the generalization ability. For this task, the training set and test set are from different domains, and thus entity linking models tend to be overfitting due to a tendency of memorizing the properties of entities that appear frequently in the training set. So the idea is that they argue that general ultra fine-grained type information can help the entity linking models to learn contextual commonality and improve their generalization ability to tackle the overfitting problem. However, in the zero-shot entity linking setting, any type information is not available, and entities are only identified by textual descriptions. Thus, we first extract the ultra-fine type information from entity textual descriptions. Some papers use entity type as a latent variable. You will see. I think that from Oxford University do that, or from Zurich University. Then they propose a hierarchical multitask model to improve the high-level zero-shot entity linking candidate generation task by utilizing the entity typing task as an auxiliary low-level task, which introduces extracted ultra-fine type information into the candidate generation task. So entity linking consists of two phases: candidate generation, which generates a set of candidates for each mention, because you have millions of entities in UMLS, for example. Among that, you just take the top K candidates, and this process is called retriever. And then you give it to the re-ranking process, the second stage, which is candidate ranking, which retrieves the matched entities for each mention from the set of candidates. As the final results in entity linking are only generated from candidate sets, the accuracy of the whole entity linking is limited by the candidate generation phase. Therefore, in this paper, I focus on the candidate generation phase to set a high upper bound on the entity linking accuracy. So we generalize to new entities, new unseen entities. Traditional entity linking approaches usually train models under the setting that linked entities in the test are available in a training set. However, in many real-world scenarios, labeled data are not easily obtained in multiple domains. Thus, there is a need for entity linking models to have the capability of generalizing to new domains and new entities. To challenge the generalization ability, a zero-shot entity linking task has been proposed, where mentions need to be linked to unseen entities, And only the textual information is available. For this task, the training and test sets share different distributions of entities, and thus entity linking models tend to be overfitting due to tendency of memorizing the properties of entities that appear frequently in the training set. So Michael would get fooled on every plate and still. So Michael is the mention that we have, but we have two different entities. So this one is true, this entity is true, and the other one is false. This is a kind of entity linking. So type informations are helpful. We argue that general ultrafine grained type information can help linking models learn contextual commonality and improve their generalization ability to tackle the overfitting problem. So this is the architecture for entity type modeling. They first create CLS token and then mention and then separate their token, because not only mention but also the context is also important. We give it to the bird. And on the other hand, we have type and their descriptions. For example, this person with a description, person is a human, and then we give it to the bird. So we have type information and descriptions, we have mention, and then we give it to feed-forward neural networks, and we get our types. But these types are latent variable, could be considered as latent variable. We have modeled them. So we give it to it's just one of the inputs that goes for the final entity linking task, because at entity linking, we need mention and entity descriptions. Here we use type descriptions, but here we use entity descriptions. And so we have three types of inputs. First, mention and context, entity and description, and the data from the type, ultrafine type. And so the entity typing, as I said, we give it to feed-forward neural networks, and label-wise feature extraction. So a label-wise attention is utilized to learn individual representation. The compatibility of label word pairs is measured like this. G is a matrix. And the attention scores for all the words of mentioned context with regard to ELF label are computed. So this is the attention. Attention is here, and then it's a linear combination. And for multi-class classification, for example, for the else type, the binary prediction YL is computed. So we give it to feed-forward neural networks, it returns YL and YL hat, and we compare it to the gold. And so after training the entity typing model, we use the model to extract ultrafine for each entity in zeroshot. And their model extends Blink that I've explained on my playlist for entity linking. So for feature extraction, so they give the context mention and title description of each entity. And so I've explained all of these things. But the loss of type is this, because we have type for mention and type for entities. And also they have a high-level candidate generation. And so they utilize another two independent transformer layers as a task-specific encoders. So within a batch, the corresponding entity of the mention is the positive sample with other entities in the batch that are all negative samples of the mention. Thus, for candidate scoring, the loss needs to maximize the score of a corresponding entity of the mention in the batch. So we maximize this score of mention and entity. And We maximize this one, and the rest are the negative samples. So we have type information for entity, type of mention, and the task of mention entity link. Entity linking, which for each mention assigns the highest probable entity.